A brand new MLS points record and late night dramatics on MLS Decision Day. It was raining red cards in England. And is Christian Pulisic AC Milan's best player? That and more on Monday's Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome into Morning Kickaround, where we cover the world's favorite game from everyone's favorite country. Coming to you live from the upper Midwest of the United States, I'm Robert Kerr. Coming to us from the east side of the country, one of America's favorite Jason Davises.
I am one of America's. I learned about a new Jason Davis. I took my kid to a college fair yesterday, Robert, and one of the schools that we talked to handed us a brochure, and in it said, "Come meet with biologist Jason Davis." And I was like, well, that's definitely not me. I'm the farthest thing from a biologist you'll find as a Jason Davis.
But you, in your work as a radio man, it is a human science. So, I mean, biology adjacent, I suppose.
Sure. Let's pretend that that's the case. Yes.
Well,
I care about players tearing ligaments and things like that. That's sort of like biology, right? It's as you said, biology adjacent. Let's pretend. Let's go.
We're here on October 21st, and this weekend was an absolute sports buffet. I watched a ton, and I still needed a to-go box for the rest of the sports. How did you take it all in? Because there was an absolute overabundance. Every single sport, soccer and otherwise, was in action this weekend.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm a soccer guy, but I'm still American. Got to keep my finger on the pulse of the good old throw ball and the baseball or the pelota or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, a little bit of everything. I know there was a championship won in the WNBA this weekend. It was so much stuff out there.
Well, on Friday, we posted some cornerstone content for Morning Kickaround. We did a segment on all the weirdest American soccer club naming, and go to Morning Kickaround YouTube and subscribe and like and watch that video, because that's really kind of the heart of what we're working for here on Morning Kickaround is, getting all the headlines of the world and bringing it all back to American soccer. And the more voices and support and views we get, the better that these will become, and the better the content will become. To do so and be helpful, hit us up.
I would say come for things like the weirdest club names in American soccer history, and stay for the controversial Messi videos, I guess is where we're at right now, Robert. That's what we're doing.
Well with the Messi content, and we're trying to boost the Americana. But subscribe to the channel, and if you want to get a hold of us, contact us on social media, Kickaround on the X and the Instagram. And if you want to write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. We've heard a couple voices ask for podcasting, so we might venture into that. More to come on that. But I think we're a couple minutes in, and let's dig into the football, Monday mornings, long balls. Here we go. Our first touch of the day, long ball number one for October 21st, 2024. Did MLS Decision Day live up to the hype, Jason?
I would say, such as it was. Going in, we knew there weren't a lot of things to play for on the final day of the season, but yeah, I think it did. I mean, you did. So in the Eastern Conference, Lionel Messi coming on as a substitute, collecting a hat trick, playing a ball. What are we calling that? A hockey assist, a secondary assist that leads to a goal for Inter Miami. They run rampant over the Revs. What was it, 6-2 on the day? I think the Revs were up 2-0 in that game before Miami went crazy, Robert. And then in the Western Conference, I mean, down the table in the East, before I move on, the way things went, DC United knocked out, Atlanta saving themselves and getting in, pain for the black and red, and obviously good things for the Five Stripes. There's some drama there. I mean, we can argue about whether it's good for mediocre to poor teams to be in the playoff field, Robert. They expanded 9 teams from each conference playoff field. But in terms of those fan bases and those teams, that was certainly some drama. And then in the West, I was watching as it went down, as LAFC found a way to get themselves in a position to be in first place at the end of the day in the Western Conference, watching the scores, keeping an eye on the Galaxy, who are in Houston. The Galaxy get a late penalty to draw level against the Dynamo, and it looks like the Galaxy are going to finish top the table in the Western Conference, only to have the Dynamo come down and find a goal from Daniel Steres, an ex-Galaxy player who puts the dagger in. Just pain for the Galaxy fans. They went nuts at BMO Stadium, or whatever it's called out there in Los Angeles. So, a wild day for sure.
Yeah, Steris getting that goal, you just chalk that into the it's a funny old game sort of a category. Like who would lay the dagger? But one of the players you swept aside not too long ago.
A great header, like a fantastically placed header from a defender off a very good cross. I think it was trying to remember who put that cross in. I had it in my head, now it's gone. But
the guy down the right-hand side.
Yeah, the guy down the right-hand side put in the cross to kill the Galaxy's hopes of finishing first in the Western Conference. Yeah, it was quite a moment, and they even, when I was watching MLS 360, watching the Spanish version. That's just me working on my Espanol. Yeah, I'm watching the Spanish version, and they cut to Los Angeles, and the fans in that 32-52 are looking at their phones. They're like, "Oh my God, the Dynamo scored, and they're going bonkers. And it was, again, those two teams were going to make the playoffs. Those two teams are favorites going into the postseason tournament. That nothing changed on the final day with that, but there was that. It's pride for LAFC to be out the Galaxy, or for the Galaxy to lose that spot to their in-city rival, and then there is that matter of, when we get down to it, will LAFC end up hosting an MLS Cup final? Will they host a Western Conference final potentially against the Galaxy because of that single goal, that big moment, the turn in added time in Houston?
That moment that you're talking about with the LAFC fans looking at their phone, looking at the scores, that was like the most parallel to the relegation day overseas, when everyone's like listening to the transistor radios, listening to the scores to see who's going to go down. That was the most parallel to that sort of situation. Clearly, the fans were really into it, and there was a lot of passion on the line, hoping for an MLS Cup final to be hosted, much more likely with that result. And I got to say, that was probably of the season, that was the most quality, like MLS After Dark. That was the late night watching MLS was kind of how I took in live MLS games in years past. And that's been, trimmed down quite a bit with the new Apple deal. So it was entertaining, and I enjoyed that late evening, dramatics there on decision day. So the things that could have happened kind of did play out. The minimal things that were on the line did come to pass. But with that said, was there any playoff bubble finishes that were notable, or should we move on to the MVP candidacy?
No. Let's look at the standings, because I think we have the MLS final standing. Eastern Conference first, because that's where my brain goes. I don't know. I don't go left to right. I go where all the people live to where the people don't live. I am an Eastern Conference bias kind of guy. This is where the Supporter Shield team plays in the Eastern Conference. Inter Miami, top of the table, 74 points, breaking the record. Again, it wasn't just driving home that Lionel Messi is the greatest player we've ever seen in this league, the greatest player any of us ever seen, period. And perhaps, I think, and I mentioned the controversial Messi content we're making. When I say controversial, I mean that we talked on Friday about how Messi probably didn't deserve MLS MVP because he hadn't played enough games for Inter Miami this year, and they were good when he wasn't on the field. But he showed why he's going to win this award, right? We saw it on Saturday night, that he comes off the bench, he gets the hat trick, he sets up goals. What has he got? 20 goals now on the season in whatever 19 games, 20 games, I guess at this point. I think it was 20 games. The assist numbers are obviously incredible as well. So Inter Miami top of the table. Columbus finishes second. FC Cincinnati in third. Nothing was going to change there. Orlando City in fourth place. Charlotte, NYCFC, Red Bulls. I mentioned this. CF Montreal improved their spot by one. They will now host that play-in game. Atlanta United gets into the playoff field at the expense of DC United. Look, if you look at this, I feel bad for Troy Lesesne. CF Montreal also doesn't deserve to be there. I will say that. I feel bad for Troy Lesesne and DC United. They had some moments. Benteke had a great season with 23 goals, and we'll get to that with the MVP discussion. But, when your goal difference is minus 18, it's really hard to argue you deserve anything. We knew Toronto was cooked. Philly misses out on the playoffs. I mean, Philly, think about how hard done they are. And again, you got to win games, right? I don't have any real I don't have any real sympathy for the union. Although I do have a union. I like the union. I'm not a fan, but I do like the union. I like Jimmy Curtin. I like what they managed to do, sort of despite their limitations budget wise. But you look at that record. They scored 7 more goals than they gave up, and they lose out and getting into the playoffs to Montreal at -16 and Atlanta -3. Right? And their goal difference is better than both of the New York teams. And it's barely different than Orlando City and Charlotte. And they just couldn't win enough games. Those losses, 15 of them piling up, 10 draws. You take 3 of those draws and turn them into wins, and you're in the MLS Cup playoff. 2 of them probably, I think, is enough to get you into the field. So
that's definitely an oddity of any table when you see 4 teams ahead of them with a negative goal difference. That's peculiar season there.
I mean, that's MLS, though, I think, is the point. Okay, let's look at the Western Conference now. Go out there. Where, of course, LAFC on the final day of the season. Looks like it's not working. I think maybe that's my fault. We'll just talk about those standings instead of looking at them because this is a live show.
Ponder upon our Western Conference.
It's what happens. So LAFC, there it is. LAFC beating out the Galaxy by what? By goal difference, right? Because they have the same number of points, they have the same number of wins. It's just goal difference with LAFC 1 goal better than the Galaxy, and both of them really good. I mean, by MLS standards, +20. I think we've had some really big numbers in the past couple of years, but those are solid numbers. Obviously, RSL finishing 3rd with a win on their final day. Seattle Sounders, I think that was a draw against Vancouver, right? They end up in 4th, but that does mean home field in that first round of the playoffs for them. Houston gets the win, but doesn't get a chance at a home field advantage. It's not hosting because it's best of 3 and all that. But Minnesota United, Colorado Rapids, Vancouver, Portland, and then Austin, Dallas, St. Louis down the table. I would say this about the West, Robert. The teams that are in are the teams that deserve to be there. Right? This shook out in the Western Conference where you say, I mean, again, I think 9 is too many. I'm not arguing 9's not too many. But I don't see a team that's in the playoff field where I'm like, oh, that's a trash team. That's a terrible team, or they don't deserve to be there. Austin, Dallas, St. Louis, Sporting, and San Jose were clearly behind everybody else. And it's not like a quirk that you end up with a field that stops with the Timbers, who have an MVP candidate of their own, who I think is going to get left out of most people's discussion.
Yeah, it seems justified, a little bit more straightforward in that table than on the East with that plus-minus anomaly. Austin, 5 points behind Portland, 18 goal difference spread. Definitely much more clearly defined, the good and the bad there in the Western Conference.
Okay. Yeah, there it is. Final day.
Long ball number 2 of the day. Who boosted their MVP candidacy most on the final day of the MLS regular season?
Lionel Messi, who was already going to win. He was already going to win. We argued about this, or we discussed it on Friday. I made the case that from my perspective, he didn't play enough games. Right? It felt wrong to award somebody who didn't play in nearly as many games as a Cucho Hernandez did or a Christian Benteke did. Denis Bouanga, who finished out the season strong. Again, Bouanga 20 goals, Messi 20 goals. Obviously, Luis Suarez, who we kind of mentioned on Friday, but I think is going to get left out of most people's conversation because he plays alongside Lionel Messi. But Messi with the hat trick, Messi with the difference he made when he stepped on the field. The Revs are bad.
He entered the game at 2-2 and the game ended 6-2. I mean, if you're going to demonstrate in one match why you are valuable, it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll also point out, again, I think the top 4 as I had them going into the final day were Benteke, Golden Boot winner, should be in the conversation. Lionel Messi, Denis Bouanga, Cucho Hernandez. Those for me were the 4 guys that were leading the way. Now you can argue that Suarez should be in there based on pure goal numbers. You can argue that Evander could be in there because where would Portland be without him? Like this is where we get into the semantics of, is a most valuable player award given to the best player in the league, backed up by numbers, or is it given to the most important player to his team? And then you're obviously taking into account what that team achieves. And in this case, because it's a regular season award, the fact that Christian Benteke won the Golden Boot puts him in the conversation. The fact that DC United did not get into the playoffs takes him right out of the conversation. He's no longer in the conversation. He's done. Sorry, Christian. You had an incredible season. It's not your fault. Christian, it's not your fault. It's everybody else's fault. I don't know. It's DC United not a good enough team around him to get into the playoffs. We could talk about Cucho Hernandez, a very, very good player, an incredible player on a good team, on maybe the second or third best team in the league in 2024. Absolutely deserves to be in the conversation. Denis Bouanga, kind of the same thing, right? Ends up with 20 goals. I'll point out, Denis Bouanga scored 7 times from the penalty spot. So take that for what it is. If you want to ding him for that, because those are penalty goals and not run-of-play goals, but he's obviously incredibly important to his team. But the best player on the best team usually wins the award. And the best player on the best team, no matter how many games he played in, and I think he hit 20 on Saturday night with his substitute appearance, is Lionel Messi. That's it. Lionel Messi is the MVP for 2024. Wrap it up. Put a bow on it, hand it to him. He's got to find some space. I don't know where this man puts all his awards. He just won an award from Marca. Like, I just saw some pictures last week, before they went to New England, I guess. I'm sorry, before they played New England at home. He got an award from Marca in Miami. He obviously is getting awards left and right because he's just that guy. So he's got to find space. You got to clear out some space. Or maybe it's a rotation. What do you think? It's like a rotation thing in his house, Robert? Like, sometimes this award is there, and then we take it out, we put a different award. That one goes in storage for a while. How do you think it plays out?
A trophy room with kind of like an airport, baggage claim conveyor belt where it's just constantly rotating, a slow turn where you just keep adding and adding and adding. And it's a case of the rich get richer, right? I mean, would the 8th different award he's received in the season mean as much to him as Cucho Hernandez, who probably doesn't have too many MVP awards on his shelf?
If we're going to say who would appreciate it most, it's probably not Lionel Messi, only because he's won everything. I mean, he's won Ballon d'Ors. That trumps the MLS MVP job by just a little bit. He's won, the most Ballon d'Ors of anybody in history. So it's probably not going to rank right there. But I will say this about Messi. He seems to be 100% engaged. He seems to take everything as it comes. Mm-hmm. I don't think he looks at the MVP and goes, oh, whatever. That's not his mentality. His mentality is thrilled to win it again because he just loves playing the game and he loves winning, and he's got right now the best team going into the MLS Cup playoffs. And I know we're going to talk about the bracket later in the show, so we'll take a look at what the path looks like for Inter Miami to do a double.
One more interesting note as the regular season wraps up. 4 players above the 20-goal threshold, which doesn't always happen that there's any at all in Major League Soccer. Bouanga with 20, Messi with 20, Suarez with 20, and the aforementioned Christian Benteke with 23. It always seems to be the case. Sorry, in his pomp, Christian Benteke on Aston Villa banging in goals. Definitely another team on the outside looking in those years. But moving across the pond, long ball number 3 for Monday, October 21st. The good, the bad, and the ugly from Europe. There was plenty of all those categories. I'll kick us off with the good, in my opinion. Liverpool and Chelsea, the Sunday headline matchup, proving both teams are, in fact, the class or in the class of the Premier League. The match commentary, I think, summed it up on the final whistle. Liverpool, with the win, are certainly now title contenders, and Chelsea are a work in progress, but a rapid work in progress.
I know. I think that Maresca's done very, very good work. Let's point out. I mean, this is not necessarily about the U.S. men's national team, but Mauricio Pochettino did a lot of the work to get Chelsea to that moment where
Enzo he got them back to a respectable level at that last 2 months of the season.
He did a lot of work with a bunch of young players, and don't forget that they had some very difficult moments last year. That absolute battle with Tottenham to start the calendar year was a major moment for both those teams. Obviously, it upended Tottenham in more ways than it did Chelsea, I think, relative to expectations. You have a pretty young team at Chelsea. Right, they had that penalty fight. Can't remember exactly when that happened. I believe it was March or April, something in that area. And Pochettino handled it as well as anybody could. I I don't know if they would be exactly where they are if Pochettino was in charge. I think the football has changed a little bit. It's a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more attack-minded. They go for things in a way that maybe they weren't going for it all the time under Pochettino. But, man, they definitely have some pieces there. But it's clear, and for a team that also made a transition at coach, at the managerial position in Liverpool, for them to be a point above everybody, a point above City, 8 matches in. It's so early. Let's not count any chickens. I don't think anybody liver birds. Let's not count liver birds.
Liverbirds.
It's Liverpool and liverbirds. Yeah, you guys
Yeah.
are so confusing. Why is that a thing?
Just like how my English father says, whenever anything like that doesn't make sense, you can just chalk it up to being traditional.
Oh, okay. So
It's
traditional.
traditional.
Don't count your liver birds, I guess, is what I was trying to say there. For them to be where they are is obviously an achievement. I mean, you wouldn't have had them losing at home to Forest on your bingo card. So they could be 4 points up now instead of 1, but it's still a very good start for Arne Slot. They've only conceded 3 times on the season.
None in the first. They haven't conceded a first half goal yet the whole season.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we know City's going to be there all the way down, especially if they benefit from calls like they did this weekend. We'll maybe talk about that at some point. But we're talking about the good, right? Liverpool, Chelsea, obviously that game living up to the billing is part of the good.
Another part of the good, Christian Pulisic gets an assist, and he looked very, very sharp once again. We'll talk about him more in a little bit, but I definitely put him in the good category. Would you put Eric Ten Hag in the good category? Man, you getting a 2-1 win over a team they've had a tricky time with in the past in Brentford?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's good enough, right? That's what you want to say, is that it's not good. Things don't change overnight because you beat Brentford, but it's especially at home, right?
You don't dig yourself a deeper hole, that's for sure.
No, you don't, but you're not exactly climbing out of it by beating Brentford. If Manchester United wants to be back where they think they belong, it's going to take a lot more than that. They've only got, speaking of Liverpool only conceding 3 goals, United's only scored 7 times on the season, and that includes the 2-1 win over Brentford this weekend. So, that's still a lot of work to do. But let's just say good enough for the moment to perhaps save his job, as the vultures are circling, and we keep hearing in the media that they've already talked to several people, potentially, including Thomas Frank, who was spotted in Manchester or in the greater Manchester area having lunch with somebody, and everybody was like, oh, he's going for the United job. That's not what you want if you're Eric Ten Hag.
No, and that's where he's going to be with how his tenure has been and the nature of Manchester United. He's just going to be there. Anytime anyone is spotted at any of those games now moving forward, it's going to be in the tabloids, and not a good situation. You might call that bad. So we'll switch to the good and the bad, and the ugly will go to bad. We are 8 match days in, and there are 4 Premier League teams without a single win. That's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty. You could argue it's ugly, but I think for our little segment here, we need to put that in the bad category. At the same time, do you look at any of those teams and you're shocked, you're surprised, you're flabbergasted by the lack of victories? Is there one team that stands out and you go, I'm surprised they don't have a win yet?
Of the 4 teams, Ipswich, Southampton, Palace, and Wolves, I think Palace surprised me the most.
Yes.
Because I still kind of consider them in my mind a good team. They were the last 2-3 months of the season were incredible last year. They lost a couple pieces, and they haven't really looked horrible, but they've not gotten any wins, and they've been pipped at the end quite a few times, and they've had a rough ride. Another team who's lost a little bit. I don't think that they're going to be at the bottom the rest of the way, but Wolves, they gave Manchester City everything they could, and they still lost.
Well, that's the thing. It does feel as though Palace and Wolves historically don't belong in that group, right? That's what you're saying. Like, there's this sense that, oh, those teams are better than where they are. But right now, they're probably not. Right now, roster-wise, squad-wise, they're probably not. And, by now, it's actually a bit of a surprise to me that with the international break we just went through, because that's traditionally the moment that you consider things. We didn't have any sackings, right? We didn't have anybody We didn't have Glasner lose his job at Palace. We didn't see any. I don't know if it's panic is the right word, but the Wolves has every reason to panic right now with a single point from 8 matches. Like that feels like the moment when you're like, okay, Gary, thank you for your time. Let's move on. But then it becomes the revolving door. And if you don't have a better option right now, and what kind of coach can Wolves attract? Maybe it's not better to go diving back into that pool.
If you look at the goal difference, it really spells out why Wolves are struggling. They have scored 10 goals, which would put them as good as 15th place West Ham as far as goal tallies, but they've conceded 23 times.
23 goals.
8 games.
6 of those were against Chelsea. I will mention that. It doesn't change a lot. You still conceded them. It just happened that one game was a big boost to that number. So are they good? No. Are they a relegation quality side? The results say yes, and until proven otherwise, that's what they look like. I mean, it is definitely a bit of joy for Everton, for Ipswich, for those kind of teams that Wolves are as bad as they are defensively and are sitting down at the bottom. I think you would have imagined Southampton would have been down there. We came into the season. Are the 3 promoted teams going to be the 3 relegated teams? Well, right now, and again, early, only 8 matches in, with Palace, by the way, playing Forest today.
Yep.
After our show, it looks like, Forest might be good enough to stay up again. Southampton probably going to end up going down. I don't think that's a shock. Ipswich fighting for it, right? Giving themselves an absolute chance at the moment. Leicester City, I think a lot of people had them going down again too. And there they are, 14th position, couple of wins on the trot.
Long ball number 3, the ugly of our good, bad, and the ugly. And I think it's almost a no-doubter. This was an easy pick for ugly. The video assistant referee system. They said they are inferring that this is going to be flawless stuff. And with the decisions at the weekend, it's shown to be very inconsistent.
I don't know that so I will say this for the powers that be, and you can obviously not like referees as a general rule if that's just your position, but I think for the most part, Howard Webb, he's the guy again in the Premier League. They don't say it's going to be perfect. They don't say like every call is going to be right. What they say is that this is meant to get the egregious calls and fix them when they're made, when those mistakes are so obvious. And there were some examples this weekend of sort of egregious mistakes being fixed. But I don't like that we come out of a pretty dramatic Premier League weekend with some good games and some big moments. And what we're talking about is, well, in this game, that's a last man red card, and it's not it's the right call. And then on this other game, well, that one's not a last man red card because it's slightly different. Right? It's slightly different, Robert. And again, the offside, Bernardo Silva in that Wolves City game, shielding, screening the goalkeeper, but probably not screening the goalkeeper. I'm not even sure I'm not saying it's a bad call to give that goal, right? I'm not saying that. So the goal happens, they wave it off for offside, they go to VAR, they correct the mistake because Silva's not in a position to actually interfere with the goalkeeper, right? And then you look back in history and you see, well, there were moments like that where the call was made the other way. Mm-hmm. And the problem I have here is that so much of even the book that we use to officiate the game, the laws of the game are subjective inherently. Right? You can't write a law that makes such a bright white line between one side of the call and the other side of the call that everything is going to be binary. There are 50-50 calls all over the field. There are 60-40 calls, and that's just a guess. Like, we're just approximating. Oh, that collision, that is 60-40, right? That shoulder to shoulder, is that a fair shoulder to shoulder, or there's an advantage getting there? Somebody's fouling in that moment. Like, everything is subjective from the very beginning. Even handballs are subjective. Right? Sometimes handballs are given and you're like, okay, yep, 100%. And then sometimes they're given, you're like, well, did he really, is that the silhouette thing? Is that a guide that actually means anything? And for me, all this does is take the responsibility for making a subjective call from the person whose job it always was in the past and move it to somebody else who's not really getting. I mean, look, you can say that the video images provide a better view, but when the call in the beginning is subjective and it stays subjective, we're just adding time. We're just stretching the game out. We're taking away those joyful moments of celebration when a goal is scored because everybody has to second guess themselves. I mean, again, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. You can point to individual calls and say, they got that right, they got that right, they got that right. But there are enough bad calls coming out of VAR, and there are enough just moments of frustration over the interruptions, the flow of the game, the spirit, the joy of it all, that I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't know if I ever will, Robert.
I definitely got my blood pressure up watching the Manchester City thing, just because I knew once they went to VAR, I already knew the outcome when they were talking about that. That one, the middle finger might have been pointed at the television.
So again, you look at that situation. Right? It's, again, you can see from the angle of the video behind the goal that Silva is not screening the goalkeeper, that he is not interfering but he is in an offside position, right? There's no doubt he's in an offside position. So again, we're just trying to squeeze some certainty into a law that doesn't have certainty available. Because if he is 1 foot to the left, he's screening now or he's not. Right? Again, I know I'm moving him in this scenario and that's not where he was, but every team that has a call like that, either made for them or against them, is going to be arguing about it anyway. VAR doesn't clarify whether or not the law is right. It only allows for a subjective decision to be made after the fact. You've already got a subjective call. And City fans will say that's not fair, that we would be disallowed a goal that could help us win a title if Silva wasn't actually screening the goalkeeper. Yeah, sure, you're right about that. But there are other times when we use this system where it doesn't do what it's supposed to do or what people think it does. And all it does is create this sense that we're supposed to get everything right when that is not possible from the very outset. The whole thing is a fool's errand to begin with.
It's all quite confounding with the video assistant referee. We could talk all day about all the various hairs to pick with the video assistant referee, but we'll move right along. If you want your say in today's long balls, hit us up on Kickaround on X and Instagram, or write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. And definitely hit us up, follow on YouTube, because we're going to keep on coming with these topics each and every show. With those long balls in the rearview mirror, let's move right along to today's hot topic. Hot topic for Monday, on the heels of another standout performance for AC Milan and a highlight reel assist in the match. Is Christian Pulisic too good to stay in Milan?
Stirring it up a little bit here, Robert, with this question. Is he too good to stay at AC Milan? Well, first, let me give AC Milan the credit the club deserves. This is a historically important club in the history of European football, Robert. I mean, you could argue that Milan ushered in the modern era of football in the 90s and going into the 2000s.
Sure.
This is a massive, massive team by any measure. I don't need to get into whether their revenues match with a City or a Real Madrid or anything like that to know that, right? That it is disrespectful to say, well, Milan can't compete economically with those teams, therefore they're not a big club. That's not how it should work. I mean, again, whether or not that's how it works when they go into the transfer market, that's a different question. But in terms of where they rank among the great clubs of the world, they're in that conversation for the top tier. But maybe Christian Pulisic is too good for Milan.
As I look at his stats, he does lead the team in player rating, top scorer, and top assist maker.
The bottom line is that AC Milan right now is probably not going to be competing for any major trophies.
No.
That's not a controversial statement, right? They are behind the top 2 or 3 teams in Italy right now. I think everybody recognizes that. I mean, the start of their season drove home that point. They are not, therefore, much of a contender for anything in the Champions League. Like, we shall see how it continues to play out with the new format and all those things. And I suspect that they'll be in the quarterfinals and then give themselves a chance to maybe do something if they can spring maybe an upset or two. It depends on sort of who they get matched up with when they get to that level. That's pretty much every one of these tournaments. But there are obviously clubs that you look at them and go, well, it doesn't really matter who they draw. They'll be favorites. That's Madrid. That's City. That's maybe a Bayern. Right? That's not AC Milan. That's not where they are. So I guess that this comes down to, would Christian Pulisic be able to do this in a team that is a contender to win a major trophy, whether that's in one of the top 5 leagues of Europe or the Champions League? And based on current form, I'd have to say yes. But let's not forget, and we all watch the video of him in a golf cart talking candidly about his experience in Milan in that very understated Christian Pulisic way. Like it's great, yeah, bro. That's great, bro. Milan is great, bro. He is thriving because he likes where he's at. And if he wasn't where he's at, would he be thriving? That's a reasonable question to ask.
Yeah, the fit into the team and his form are definitely not a mistake that they're going together. The question arises because we want to see him near the top of the table in whatever league that he is participating on.
Did you know Benito Mussolini put...
Sorry about that. Not sure what happened there.
We got sound drops on this show now.
Yeah, apparently we do. That's my fault. Doing this live is causing me problems. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I bring up the question, is he too good for Milan? Because he is leading the team for a team that is not at the top of the table. And hopefully Milan can get some wins because they're 0-2 in Champions League. Hopefully they can get some results in Champions League so that they can make the knockout round. So there's more games where he's on that huge stage. Yeah. And I mean, he provided the assist in the 1-0 win, but they were down a man. So Milan showing a little bit of mettle and some defense solidity that they haven't shown previously. So maybe I'm selling them a little short. Maybe they are on the improvement.
Oh yeah, it's possible. It's possible. By the way, speaking of his comfort level, the man did a post-game press conference, or a post-game interview rather, on the field in Italian. He did it in Italian. I don't know. I don't know how good his Italian is. I'm not a judge of Italian, but the fact that he's been, learning, he wants to be engaged with the culture in Milan, that's a statement about how comfortable he is. I think if you could look at it this couple ways. One, from an American perspective, do you care more about Christian Pulisic feeling good about himself, being confident, playing good football, because that will come to play for the U.S. men's national team? That will make him a better player for the U.S. when we go into games that mean something. And again, we're still a year and a half from the World Cup, roughly. Or do you think it's important for him to be at a club that is contending for trophies in whatever context? And you would think, Premier League, Bundesliga, Serie A, La Liga are top of that list, and obviously Champions League, because it flies the American soccer flag in a way that is good for our soccer culture. Right? More kids running around in Pulisic jerseys, not just because he's a good player, but because he's winning things. I know he's already got a Champions League. I'm not trying to take that away from him. But obviously right now he's playing at a level where he wouldn't be a part-timer. He wouldn't have to worry about his opportunities if he was comfortable, if he felt good, if they believed in him.
In a vapid, very short-sighted, fan-centric way to answer that, I would love for him to be, for Bayern Munich or something like that, and have him be, the banner name on one of the most banner teams on the planet. But in a realistic way, it's probably the former, seeing him be the best team on a legendary team. And, he's building a legitimate, reputation, and he's carving a niche in one of the most important soccer hemispheres or leagues or countries, however you want to state it. He is, carving his niche as one of the top players in one of the most important soccer countries in the land. So I mean, realistically, we do want him.
Let's not be greedy, right? Let's just take this for what it is, and not be like, well, Christian's got to go to a bigger club, or he's got to be playing Champions League finals and that kind of, or it's not good enough. I think you're probably right about that. I will throw this in too. Like what's very clearly, what's another interesting thing about this? What's very clear is that Milan got a steal. Right? Milan got a steal. Chelsea somehow conspired to drive his price down because they treated him like crap for the most part, and he was injured too much, and Milan got a steal. And, you know, it's obviously two different managers now have benefited from Christian Pulisic being healthy and playing at a high level.
I mean, do you think that he would have had this run of form regardless of where he have landed with just having the health? Because he seemed to always work himself back into the Chelsea team whenever he found his fitness.
No, I do think that there's something to be said for Christian is kind of a player who does need a certain set of circumstances. Now, he's only played for 3 clubs, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't have this huge, long list of teams in different places, and it worked here and it didn't work there. His first team, he's had some success with because they were known for developing players. They bring him through. They give him opportunities. They're obviously they're taking care of him. Like, it's pretty clear that Dortmund knows how to take care of young players. Yeah. Chelsea did not. Chelsea's idea for taking care of players is like sign 1 billion of them and send them out on loan. That's about as much as Chelsea does. I think that maybe things are changing at Chelsea, obviously, but during the period when Christian Pulisic was there, they were not good at developing players and bringing them along and showing them care, right? It's kind of like, oh, you're a Chelsea player now? Well, take care of your shit or you'll never play. Right? You need to be on top of this. You need to be better, or there's too much competition. Why would they worry about and because the money that they could throw around, why would they worry about a Pulisic? Their investment was significant, but small enough relative to some other things that they didn't put in the care. They didn't take care. They didn't get the oil changed every 3,000 miles on a Christian Pulisic, Robert. But Milan's in a different position. Like, despite the fact they didn't spend a crazy amount of money on him, he's relative to his production, he's still a huge investment for them because of where they are financially. So they have to make sure he's successful. It seems as though it's either Milan or the place or the food or the culture or whatever. It agrees with Christian. So I do think he needs that set of circumstances. He's not one of those players that you could sort of drop in anywhere in the world and he would thrive.
To your point earlier about wanting to see Pulisic jerseys running around, have you seen many Pulisic Milan jerseys out in the wild?
I have not. In fact, oddly enough, I mean, maybe it's where I am. Maybe it's where the area that I live in. I live in a very diverse, multicultural kind of place. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I see a lot of Hakimi jerseys, which is a really random thing. I'm like, oh, that's like the 3rd Hakimi jersey I've seen in like the last week, which, he's an incredible player. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to have people running around with his jersey on. I'm just surprised by that. I don't see a lot of Pulisic. I see a lot of Messi. Messi's everywhere. Messi.
Yeah, I see plenty of United States Pulisic jerseys, and obviously the Inter Miami and the Barcelona Messi kits, but I can't say I've seen maybe more than one Milan Pulisic.
And this is what I would say about that too.
It's probably an Italian thing too.
I think it indicates that Serie A, they do have a pretty good rights deal with Paramount Plus and CBS, but I don't think they do enough. I mean, the Serie A has been behind the rest of the big European leagues, maybe except for Ligue 1, in terms of marketing themselves outside of their home country, at least, or to our part of the world, right, to North America. And they have some American players, and they have an opportunity to be better about that. And I don't think it's kicked in well enough yet. I mean, I know the Galazzo people talk about it all the time because of the rights. I know they have shows that are specifically around Serie A, and they have talking heads and the like, but it doesn't seem as though they've broken out of that bubble where, like you said, there would be a lot of Christian Pulisic jerseys because, yeah, he's an American. He's the best player Milan has right now, and for some reason, it hasn't become a phenomenon in any particular way.
Yeah, the stagnation of Italian football, they were the leaders of, you said it earlier, brought football to its modern era in the 90s. That was the class of European football during the 90s. And while the Premier League and others were building out TV contracts and building new stadiums and all that, and Italian teams still, rent their facilities and stuff like that. So and they haven't caught up. quite yet. With that being said, Pulisic to Real Madrid.
It seems a little crowded over there right now at Madrid. That's the thing. I don't know. You bring it up, but I know it's a little facetious. But I don't know that there's a place right now that makes sense. Now things change, right? And players leave.
Yep.
So, whether that's a Bayern, whether that's one of the top teams in England, perhaps even a Liverpool. I mean, Mo Salah is not going to play there forever, right? Perhaps there is a team that's going to be making a change in the next couple years, and if Pulisic keeps it up, and this is still, we don't have enough of this to say, well, that's just who Pulisic is now, right? We keep saying that this is a great run of form, but if he's going to be that kind of player that gets an 80 million pound, 80 million euro move somewhere else, at this point in his career, it's got to be more than just a good run of form. It's got to be the season.
If you want to have your say in today's hot topic on Christian Pulisic, hit us up. Kickaround on X and Instagram, or send us an email at morningkickaround@gmail.com. Need some comments and have your say here on Morning Kickaround. Let's take a moment, catch our breath, and come right back with Monday's Big Picture. All right, the big question of the day, what is the MLS playoff picture? The regular season decision day went down on Saturday, and the playoff picture is clear, and the start of it all, the play-in games, start already on Tuesday. Montreal and Atlanta playoffs on Tuesday. Vancouver
are those playoffs?
On Wednesday.
Playoffs?
Game.
Playoffs?
Junior varsity playoffs.
Playoffs? All right, I'm sorry. I'm going to just do that a couple more times. All right, we got the bracket. Let's take a look at the bracket for the MLS Cup playoffs, now that we know every team that's involved. There you go. Down at the bottom, that's what you're talking about, the wild card. They're called wild cards. I thought they were called play-ins. I guess they're called wild cards. We need to be sure about this terminology. Major League Soccer, soccer.com. Let's make this happen. Let's make sure we know what the terminology is.
So before we dig into this, is this another new format? Because there's always the tricky scheduling for MLS playoffs because there's international windows, there's a few different moving parts. So is this a new bracket this year?
No. What do you mean? No, it's the same as last year. What are you talking about, Robert?
So last year was the first year of this setup, because I remember they do the first round and then there'd be an international break and it would all get kind of lost in the mix.
Well, we do have a November international break, so that will interrupt some things. We will not have just consistent play all the way through to MLS Cup final. So there's going to be a interruption. We don't have this. This is just the bracket. We don't have the schedule. We can look at the schedule, but remember that, and this is the second year. We know that there's a wild card game, one game at the home of the higher seed. In this case, Vancouver will host. Well, actually, that's not true. We know that Vancouver has motocross, supercross happening at BC Place. I nearly misspoke. I forgot my crazy MLS story of the week. So Vancouver will not host that game. The Timbers will host that game in Portland, even though they finished behind Vancouver in the standings. The winner of that will go on to face LAFC, who, of course, is the top seed in the Western Conference. In the East, Montreal hosting Atlanta United. That team, whoever wins that game midweek, will go and play the best of three against Inter Miami. And that's what you have to remember. All those other matchups, those are best of three matchups. So we've got Inter Miami will play 3 games against the winner of Montreal Atlanta. Orlando and Charlotte will play 3 games, et cetera, et cetera. And again, the higher seed gets the benefit of hosting 2 of those games. Right, Robert?
Yeah. I'm rolling with you.
You're 100% on board. You understand completely what the MLS Cup playoff bracket looks like and why it looks like that?
Oh, totally.
All right.
It's the king of caveats here. MLS, that's my new nickname, the king of caveats. Motocross will switch up our bracket arrangement, for sure.
That mean, yeah, if you were going to fill out your bracket, if you're going to treat this like the NCAA tournament, and MLS has done this in the past, like they got a bracket challenge. If you want to do that, you're going to have to consider that, no, Vancouver will not be hosting that game. It will be at Providence Park. Do you give Portland the edge at home? I think I would. I think I would give Portland the edge at home. And then we get into, okay, what does it look like in those best of 3 series? And how do you think those will play out? Because again, you would give the higher seed the advantage. I think that's, we talked about this. With the Apple TV deal that MLS signed, they wanted more inventory. They wanted more games to sell to Apple, hence the expansion of the playoffs to the best of 3 format. And at the same time, you hope from a competitive integrity standpoint that that's enough of a reward for the higher seed that it's justified, at least on some level. I think it's weird. I don't like best of 3 in in soccer, Robert. MLS did this way back in the early stages of the league when there were 8 teams. Now there are 29, about to be 30, and we're still doing it, or we brought it back. So without complaining too much about the format, do you see any matchups there that stand out to you from what we've got now for the playoffs?
Ooh, I think in the first round, I can't say that anything is particularly jumping out at me. In my mind, especially on the Eastern Conference, it's all building towards if and when Inter Miami take on the Columbus Crew, because their matchups throughout the regular season and the cup competitions has been a great watch. Yeah. If I'm going to try to find something to dig into here from these first round matchups, it's a little bit of a stretch, but maybe upset alert is more maybe what we'd be looking for. Would a New York City FC beating FC
possible
as an upset, maybe?
Yeah, that's a 3 versus 6 there. I could see that happening. Now, the way that this bracket looks, okay, so the winner of that series will get the winner of Columbus Red Bulls. Now I have Columbus as strong favorites to get past the Red Bulls. So we could have Columbus versus NYCFC. We could also have Columbus versus Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's still a decent team. Let's not count them out. I'm going to have to think about that one in terms of what my pick will be. The other side of that bracket with Orlando, Charlotte, I'm not sure there's a ton to separate those two teams. I think Orlando should be better, and they're more tested, obviously. But Dean Smith's done a good job in Carolina to get Charlotte into the playoffs. Inter Miami is going to be significant favorites over whoever they face. They'll be favorites against, big favorites against Orlando or Charlotte. Does it all look like a march to a final for Miami? You said Columbus. I mean, if you're going chalk, that's obviously the pick. Does it look like we're going to get one of the? It's going to be a one-off too, so it'll be at Chase Stadium Field building, whatever it's called now, down in Fort Lauderdale, which is an advantage for Inter Miami. On the other side of it, I can actually see Colorado beating LA over 3 games.
Ooh, that might be spicy.
I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I could see it. I could see Minnesota taking down Real Salt Lake. I think there's a real possibility there. The other side, I don't know if I see a ton of upsets. You threw out NYCFC Cincinnati. That's maybe the one. Houston, Seattle. That's like flip a coin stuff there. And then LAFC will be a favorite against their wild card opponent. But when they go into that semifinal round in the Western Conference, whether it's Seattle or Houston, that's going to be tough too. So I think the West, and we knew this. We knew that the West was the tougher conference. It looks like it could be a war zone out there. And any of those teams, I could see any of those Western Conference teams in a Western Conference final or perhaps in an MLS Cup final.
Which, between the two Los Angeles teams, 1 and 2 in the West, which team is more likely to get a little bit of egg on their face and get upset? Which one has more vulnerabilities to get beaten by a lower ranked team, do you think?
Well, I think it's probably the Galaxy. I mean, I like the Galaxy. The Galaxy are good, but you look at the way it plays out for them because they missed out on the top seed. They get Colorado. That's tough. Colorado's definitely capable of surprising in Los Angeles, and then at altitude, you would have them as somewhat favorites at home in their home leg. I'm just saying it's a tough one for the Galaxy because they could be up into their RSL Minnesota. Both of those teams are capable of beating the Galaxy in a single game in LA. But I mean, the Galaxy are good. I don't think they've lost this year at home except for the Rose Bowl. So that's worth pointing out. They're really good at home. That's why you want that advantage. I mean, if we got down to a Western Conference final that was the 2 LA teams and it was at LAFC, you wouldn't say anything about the Galaxy losing that game was an upset. It would just be an incredibly interesting conference final where either team could win. I mean, if you're a neutral, Robert, is that what you're hoping for? You're hoping for LA Derby out west, and maybe you're hoping Columbus, Miami. So it's chalk, right? You're hoping for chalk all the way through.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. There's no MLS team, within hours of me. So I am truly an MLS neutral, and I almost want to hit the fast forward button quite a few weeks and get to LA versus LA and Miami versus Columbus. To be completely honest with you.
I mean, this is the thing about MLS, right? Like, this is the argument against the playoffs and the playoff format is that, hey, what if we end up with a 7 seed winning the whole thing? Will that feel right? Will that be weird? Now,
that's what they're going for, right? In a way.
Oh, I don't know why we do this. We do it in soccer, but we don't do it in other sports. Nobody says when a wild card team makes a Super Bowl, oh, they don't deserve to be there. Nobody does that. What they say is, oh, they found a way to win the playoffs. Good for them.
Cinderella story.
Yeah, Cinderella story. That's the same thing. Like I told you I took my kid to a college fair yesterday. That was at George Mason University here in Virginia.
Congrats.
George Mason made the Final Four in 2006 when they had no business making the Final Four. And nobody goes, well, oh, what a travesty that is that they got to the Final Four and almost had a chance to play for a title. No, they go, what a story. What an incredible thing that they did. That's great. We don't do that with MLS. We turn this into, if a lower seed does something, well, that indicates a problem with the format and a problem with playoffs, and you're not rewarding the team. I mean, we don't have time to litigate Supporter Shield versus MLS Cup again, right? But Inter Miami is clearly the best team in the league, but they have to prove it in a knockout style tournament as well. It's like it's a different kind of challenge. Are you good at both things? Can you shoot and also rebound? Like we're just talking about two different skill sets on some level, which I think makes it interesting. I think from a neutral's perspective, chalk sounds like the most exciting tournament because we know how good both LA teams are. We know how good Inter Miami is. We know how good Columbus, and you sort of want to see greatness up against greatness. So you want to see the best against the best to figure out who the champion is going to be. But this being MLS, there's a not insignificant chance that somebody breaks up that party.
At least one, you'd think. MLS Cup playoffs, wildcard games on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then begins in earnest on Friday with Inter Miami taking on the winner of Montreal.
Think about that turnaround.
Atlanta United.
Think about that turnaround, Robert, for the wildcard team. You just won a game. Now, Atlanta has to go to Montreal. But you just won that game. You've gotten your ticket punched for the tournament proper, and now you got to go down to Fort Lauderdale and you got to play Lionel Messi and Inter Miami.
Record-breaking team, yeah.
2 or 3 days after you played your last game, like that's, I guess it's be Tuesday. So yeah, but that's got to be rough.
I mean, it's very similar to the NCAA tournament with the play-in game. To your point, it's like you're the 65th best team. Now you have to play the best seed the next day, right?
Yeah, that's right. You are at a disadvantage because you didn't have a better regular season. And I guess that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. And Miami deserves their advantage, 74 points in the MLS regular season.
Who you excited about and what games are you guys excited about watching? Hit us up, Kickaround on X and Instagram, or, comment below here on the YouTube video. Subscribe to Morning Kickaround on YouTube. We are expanding our coverage of the world's favorite game from everyone's favorite country. Be sure to get in on it and get a touch in here on our Morning Kickaround. Comment from the crowd here. Brooks Lambier, thank you for tuning in again. He's reminding me my Western Michigan Broncos are the last undefeated team left in college soccer. Jason, BU Terriers on a 2-game winning streak. How about that?
Go Terriers. Can't pretend that I'm paying much attention to BU soccer, but yeah, go Terriers. Why not? Sure. We're a hockey school, Robert. That's the fact about BU. So, you know how it goes.
There's not a BU PU chant, is there?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
What is that? I don't understand.
Like BU, like they stink. Oh, sorry, I'm throwing a little dad joke here at the end of the show.
That's terrible. That's so terrible. I think.
If you hated that joke, write us in at morningkickaround@gmail.com. But I guess that is Monday's show. Thank you for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, do all those things. And there'll be plenty more to talk about on Wednesday morning. For Jason and myself and Jenny on the buttons, thank you. And we'll see you on Monday or Wednesday for another episode of this thing we call Morning Kick Around.